This is Dave, and I'm here with Ethan, and together we are Dave and Ethan's 2000 Inch Weird Al Podcast, episode 11 Inch.
On this episode, we continue our month-long celebration of UHF and interview the great John Du Prez, who wrote the score of UHF.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000 Inch Weird Al Podcast.
It's a podcast about Weird Al.
It's Dave and Ethan's 2000 Inch Weird Al Podcast.
Seriously, the whole podcast is about Weird Al.
Dave and Ethan's 2000 Inch Weird Al Podcast.
You don't have to listen, but we're glad you are.
Dave and Ethan's 2000 Inch Weird Al Podcast.
Wow, we had a fun week.
Yeah, 3 concerts this week. I went to Syracuse Without You, and I went with my cousin, and it was her first time ever seeing a Weird Al show, and you can hear all about it in the Syracuse, New York Centimeter.
Yeah, and then you came down and we went together to see the show in Philadelphia.
Which was one of the best shows I've seen so far. That was such a fun show.
Yeah, there were so many Weird Al fans there, so many people we got to hang out with. It was so cool. We had recorded a Centimeter episode for that. You want to check that out too when that gets released.
Yeah, and what was really exciting is for the first time ever, I got to meet Kelly Phillips, who drew the caricature of us on our website and where we use on social media. So it was really cool to get to meet her, and we have an interview with her that will be out eventually.
And we also went to Vienna, Virginia on Tuesday night. But due to the magic of podcasting, we actually haven't been to that concert yet.
I'm sure it was a great show. If anything really exciting happens, we'll talk about it maybe next week on the podcast. But for sure, we will have a bonus episode all about it.
Yeah, you can hear all about that and all of our adventures on our bonus Centimeter episodes.
And they're a lot of fun. I just caught up on them, Dave. I know I was a little bit behind, but they're really fun to kind of relive the shows, and you know which songs are coming if you're familiar with the set list. But the little things that change from night to night are really fun to hear about. And of course, Dave, you and we keep track of all the little things that people should be keeping track of in spreadsheets. So fans of our podcast, we're looking forward for those links to those spreadsheets anytime now.
Yeah, really, these Centimeter episodes, we go into a lot of detail on the concert. It's like you're sitting with us, and it's like you're living the concert with us. I think our last episode was almost as long as the concert was.
That is very true. That is very true. So this week, I will be in Guilford, New Hampshire, and then we team back up.
Yeah, on Guilford's, of course, Thursday, July 18th. And on Friday, July 19th, we'll be back in Mashantucket, Connecticut, which is home of Foxwoods.
Yeah, pretty much whenever someone asks, and you just say, I'm going to Mashantucket, they look at you with a weird face, and then you just say, Foxwoods, and they're like, yes, Foxwoods.
And then the next day, we'll be in Queens, New York at Forest Hills Stadium.
I'm excited for that one, and then I'll be zipping right up to Boston after that. And after Boston, I've got a day off, and I'm off to Lewiston, New York, which is near Buffalo.
Yeah, and that is Sunday, July 21st in Boston and Tuesday, July 23rd in Lewiston. And if you will be at any of those shows, please come over and say hi. We've talked to so many of our listeners, and we have so much fun doing it.
And we always carry some cards and stickers, so come find us. We love to give out stickers and cards, and of course to say hi to folks.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so awesome just to get to talk to everybody, and just get to hang out with them and stuff. It's just so much fun.
And so speaking of plankton, which you didn't mention, but here's my segue. The SpongeBob Big Birthday Blowout just premiered on the 12th of July on Friday on Nickelodeon. And we talked to Mr. Lawrence about that a little bit in our interview with him. So I got to see that, and it was great. It's a great mix of goofy SpongeBob goodness with them actually entering into the real world, and you get to see the actual voice actors who play the characters, including Mr. Lawrence. So it's one to check out if you haven't already.
Yeah, and you can catch our interview with Mr. Lawrence on episode 7" if you have not heard that already, or you want to listen to it again. And it's so awesome, I gotta say, that our guests are going on to do such great things, such as being on this show after being on our podcast.
Yeah, I really don't know that Mr. Lawrence's career would be where it is today if it wasn't for his appearance on our podcast. Because Dave, he was just on our podcast just a few weeks ago, and now he's on this special on Nickelodeon. That's not a coincidence.
No, I don't think so. I think that's solely due to our podcast.
Well, here's another guy who could definitely use our help. And of course, we are speaking with nothing but sarcasm and tongues in cheeks. Very excited to welcome our next guest all the way from England. He's the composer of such notable works as Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, A Fish Called Wanda, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1, 2, and 3, but most importantly, the 1989 instant cult classic favorite best film ever, UHF. Please welcome John Du Prez. John, you are the composer of UHF. What do you remember from that?
I was living in LA when I did this film because I just worked on A Fish Called Wanda. And, when it was a big splashy hit everywhere, and I think number 1 or number 2 in America, I decided to up sticks from London and bring my family over for, at least a year to see, just so that I could take advantage of any opportunities that came up. And no opportunities whatsoever came up. I'm sure LA is full of people who just kind of have one hit and they kind of rush over and, and then find out that it's a big place and you're a small fish in a big pond and you don't get anywhere. But I did do a TV series called A Fine Romance for ABC. That sort of got my kids into school because I got my work visa. But things were very thin. And then I was approached to do UHF, and they said the budget is $15,000, including you. So, that's not a big budget. In fact, it's not even a big budget for studio, let alone, working for nothing to do it. And it wasn't even chicks for free. It was just working for nothing. So, because I spent the whole $15,000 on studio time, and so we couldn't afford any musicians. But I did have access to Weird Al's band, which was great. So I got the drummer and the guitarist came in and did some tracks, and Weird Al would come in and sing. We did some, on things like the little. There's a very nice little theme, when he first comes out of the UHF station. It's like a sort of, it's like a vocal track.
Yep.
Yeah,
I can picture it exactly.
You can picture it exactly. So we just did all that, standing around the microphone, doing all that. But the only kind of weapons in my armory was an SE30 computer. I just got my first Mac. And it had Performer on it, a sequencing program called Performer, and I had an EMU rack mount with some samples, and I had a Korg M1 keyboard, and that was it. So the whole thing had to be done on that, and so if you think about those kind of big spoof numbers, like Conan the Librarian,
yep.
And the Temple of Doom spoof at the beginning, these are all orchestral. We're trying to spoof orchestral scores here, and so I had to kind of create orchestras just out of these elements. I had one other element. I played the trumpet and the French horn, so I could do a little brass. So when the big ball starts rolling down, after he's stolen the Oscar,
right,
in that opening sequence, I had Weird Al's drummer to do percussion. I had an EMU sampler to do all the strings. I had my own brass to do big brass section. And that's just about it. So it was a pretty amazing task to try and do all that. We hired a studio called Clear Lake Studio, and they had, very foolishly in their catalog, they had a 24-hour rate. So you, instead of booking the studio by the hour, you could book it by 24 hours. And so I booked it for a week. That was about all the whole budget would allow. And they then discovered that I was capable of working round the clock 24 hours a day, getting very, very little sleep in between, and that's how we got it all done.
That is remarkable. I gotta know.
Do you want me just to carry on rabbiting on, or do you have some intelligent questions that kind of focus things?
We have intelligent questions, but we also love the rabbiting on. I gotta ask. So, what was the circumstance that you were chosen for UHF? Were they a fan of Fish Called Wanda, or what was? Do you know the story behind that?
Well, I had an agent, and to the best of my knowledge, it came through my agent. My agent, Christy Barnes, was trying to get me stuff off the back of Monty Python and Fish Called Wanda. And so I suppose it struck a chord with them. They sort of said, "Oh, he's worked with Monty Python, and he's done Fish Called Wanda. He might be able to do it." So this very exotic lady called Catherine Quitner appeared at the front door. She was the music editor. And she was quite a force of nature. She had kind of wild hair sticking in all directions. She drove a red vintage Mustang, and she was kind of crazy, but very interesting and nice. So she liked my stuff, and we did the film. And so the way it worked was that I wrote the music to, I had a video. It was all on video tape recorders. So
Was the movie already filmed when you wrote this score?
Oh, I see. It was the film. Yes. The film. It was already in the can, and they were editing. They generally don't bring a composer on until they've got at least a rough cut.
Okay.
Because it's all a little bit different now, because they start editing a film as soon as they start shooting now. So that often by the time they've finished shooting, they've got a digital assemblage that you can look at. But in those days, it took time to edit film. Mm-hmm. And I think they might even have been editing on Betamax, on video. It might have been, but that was usually more expensive than working on film. So I don't know. I can't remember. I didn't go into the cutting room much. There was very little time. I suspect they might even have tried several people, and it often happens that scores crash and burn, and then it uses up the budget and it uses up the time, and then they have to find someone else with no money and no time, and that's probably what happened to me. Although I don't know whether they approached other people or not, but that was a very common thing to happen, especially in comedy, because comedy is really tough. I mean, it either works or it doesn't. And you can kill a joke at 40 paces if you're not careful.
Right.
So, so that's how it was. So I had to write the score very quickly to video, and then we got a gentleman called Mark Mann, who's an amazing digital genius that I'd met in a computer store actually. That he could do sequencing on the Mac SE30, and so I would play the music. We would prepare for the score by playing the music into this SE30, into a sequencer, so that we had a lot stored inside the computer before we went into the studio, so we could then run off the string parts and the percussion parts. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
You do a lot of preparation like that, and then we did the live music over that. And I'd rented a house in Santa Monica, so generally speaking, I don't think I went into the cutting room at all. It might even have been the case that Jay Levy was editing at his home or something like that, and so I can't remember going into any cutting room, so I don't even believe there was a cutting room.
Now, what kind of direction did Al or Jay Levy give you, or did you have kind of a free range? Here's the film. You decide what the music should be like.
Well, again, I don't know why. I I didn't spend a lot of time with Weird Al. I think that his intention was there in the film, and that he sort of basically used the music editor as a kind of, as a go-between to explain what was wanted. So, and of course, it wasn't rocket science. I mean, if you're doing, because of there were so many spoof adverts, like Spatula City and Plots Are Us. So, I mean, it wasn't like scoring a normal film from that point of view. Normally, you sort of see the whole film and you decide on the characterization, and you have themes for different characters and you follow that through. This was really quite different. It was a series of spoofs and fantasies. And so he begins with his, Raiders of the Lost Ark fantasy. And then they have all these fantasy adverts. So the whole thing was a sort of series of fantasies. And that was all very, very obvious from the footage.
Right.
And so it was like doing 10 films or 20 films and doing 20 adverts. It was like, that's how it was.
With no budget.
With no budget, yeah. You couldn't point to it and say, oh, well, there's a Weird Al character theme, or there's a love theme for his for Victoria Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Or that there's a janitor theme for Michael Richards. You didn't say, it didn't work like that. There was a kind of mop theme. I remember, when he sees, there's a sort of Holy Grail theme for his mop when he sees the mop. So there were little themes like that, throughout the film. But it was, Gandhi 2, was a kind of little world of its own. So it was a series of little worlds, if you like.
We're out of those little things. Were there any that were favorites for you to do, or any that you found really challenging?
Well, they were all challenging, and so I mean, there's a certain amount of parallel there with Python, because Python was like if you look at Meaning of Life, it starts out they're in the trenches in the First World War. So that determines the kind of music that you want behind it. It's or if there were lots and lots of examples like that. So that's kind of what it was. There was a long shopping list and I just had to work my way through,
right, and
come up with themes for all these different adverts. And often it was a case of playing against type. So in Gandhi, that was, you don't want a Gandhi theme. You want a kind of Rocky theme for because they're presenting him as a kind of action hero. So I just took each section on its own. One of my favorite sections actually was the Rambo, because that's really like a mini film. It goes on for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, and it's very little dialogue.
And I really enjoyed doing that. I mean, one of my great heroes is John Williams. I like doing sort of big orchestral, heroic music. And so that was a really great chance to do it there. And I would just kind of throw in that it's one of my long-term ambitions that I would love to perform the UHF score with an orchestra.
How can we make this happen, John? We need to hear this.
Well, I hear that Dave has magical powers. He got the kind of the Walk of Fame star organized. And
That's true.
I'll kind of throw it out to you. I missed my chance on the 25th anniversary because what I wanted to do was a live-to-screen thing at the Hollywood Bowl, where we would play the score live and Weird Al's band would play the songs, perform the songs. And basically, they said, "Well, it's too late. We've already done our 25th anniversary concert, which was in Texas, I think. It was filmed in Texas. So, to answer your earlier question, it had to be after it was filmed, because they filmed in Texas and then went back to LA to do the post. So it had to be all finished. So because I had to do it on this tiny budget, on this tiny computer with a tiny music sampler, I just love to do it properly with real instruments and do it to screen.
Incredible. That would be so incredible.
So if you can start working on that, I think that would be great.
Okay.
A lovely guy called Cody Chavez, who's trying to do the same for Turtles. He's trying to get a live-to-screen thing going. So we get an orchestra and conduct it to screen, for the Turtles movie.
That would be amazing.
So I'd love to do the UHF thing.
Okay, yeah, and it's the 30th anniversary this year of UHF, so we'll definitely.
And the other thing I would throw out there is that there was a CD from the film, but most of it was Weird Al songs.
Right.
There's very little, the score itself has never been issued on a CD. And I happen to have all the kind of master tapes of the original score, and so I'd love to do a CD of the score.
John, that was our next question. What do we need to do to get this CD out?
Well, what you have to do is to get hold of the rights holders and get their permission, and then I'll do it. Because I had a friend, tried to look into the who owns the film now, because of course Orion's gone. It was an Orion film, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, and they've disappeared. And so goodness knows who owns the rights to it at the moment.
I believe MGM.
It's MGM now?
Do you agree, Dave?
I believe it's also MGM.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that makes life easier because MGM is Sony, and it's also Fish Called Wanda was MGM. And, so if Sony owned the rights to it, and someone told me, well, the only way to find out who owns it is just to put the CD out and see who sues you.
We'll help you with that too, John. We're very we love this idea.
If you have legal background, then we could cook up a plot here.
Let's do it.
And let's face it, a UHF soundtrack album is not going to make. If you're lucky, it will cover the cost of printing. So it's not going to make a great deal of money.
Yeah, but the fans have been hoping for one for years.
It would be very nice to do it. And so,
yes.
So I did it for Fish Called Wanda. I did that 2 years ago. I've done it for Turtles, and now I've got a double vinyl came out in October. And I've already mastered Turtles 2 and 3. So
wow.
They're waiting in the wings to come out. So UHF
great.
is something I could, I'm very busy, but it's certainly something I would like to put on my list. And, get the soundtrack into presentable form, and get the soundtrack issued.
Well, John, you know what we're going to be doing the rest of this year.
So over to you.
We will do it. We will make it happen. I will promise.
We will find
right
a
now.
way.
We will figure it out.
Okay. But start with the rights holders, and
Okay.
just get their permission. That's the first thing.
We'll do it.
And then after that, then you've got to. I just have to plumb it into my schedule and put 2 or 3 months aside to do it.
That's so amazing. Okay. So you have the original tapes for the score. Do you have any other memorabilia from the film? Did they give you the Oscar or anything from the film? Any props or?
No.
You got nothing.
There is a reason for that, and that is because I told you that I took my family over to LA in 1988 on the back of Fish Called Wanda. We went over in about October, and I couldn't get anything until Christmas, so I did this TV thing from Christmas to Easter, and then I remember I did UHF at Easter, between Easter and June and July, and at that point I ran out of money and couldn't pay my rent and had to go back to England.
Oh, wow.
And it got even worse because I sublet my house to a lady called Loretta Swit that you may know from MASH.
Okay.
She was having her house in Malibu remodeled, and so she wanted a short rent, she took over the lease basically, so I didn't have to pay for the rest of the lease because I couldn't afford to do that anyway. It was $3,000 a month even back then. It was a huge rent.
Wow.
And so I thought, oh great, Loretta Swit is going to sublet. Well, I got back to England and she demanded that the landlord painted the whole thing white or something and put cable in every room. And of course they wouldn't do that. And so she refused to pay rent. And so I still had to pay the rent, even though I had no money and was back in England.
Oh.
And anyway, I finally phoned her lawyer or her agent or something and said, look, I'm the pianist. Please don't shoot me, I'm in the middle of this crossfire. You're not... It did get settled eventually. They agreed and they paid up. But so I was in dire finance. I didn't even go to the premiere of UHF.
Oh. It's terrible to hear.
So I didn't. I didn't do any filming. I didn't go to any screenings, and I just and all I heard was that it opened for one weekend, and the critics said it was the worst film ever made, and it came off again. so, but it's turned into a massive cult, which is wonderful, you know, and it's still one of my favorite. I look back on it as one of the happiest things I ever did. You know, it was so funny.
Really, it holds up so well.
And I think they should reissue the film, quite frankly. I mean, it's hilarious.
It really is. I mean, we did get the DVD eventually, and we did get a Blu-ray, but I would love to see it back in theaters. I have done a couple screenings. I used to work at a venue in upstate New York, and we did a couple live screenings with an audience, and it was just... seeing it on the big screen and with a real audience was just remarkable.
Well, you see, because, I mean, today they just re-released Life of Brian yesterday for 3 days. And so... the
40th anniversary.
Yeah, you know, so which was the first film I ever worked on. So that was my introduction to the film business, so in 1979. So it would be terrific if they just, you know, did it on release it for 2 days or 3 days or something like that. When I was on tour with Eric Idle, you know, we were touring around the country, and we ended up in one place, I forget where it was Milwaukee or somewhere like that.
Yeah.
And we'd finished the gig, and we were getting back on the tour bus, and they said, hey, there's a lady, a girl from the audience who wants you to sign her VHS of UHF. And so, you know, so I did so. We were in the street, you know, ready just to take off, but she came up, she had the DVD, she had this VHS, I think it was. And it turned out that she had decorated her flat like the Wheel of Fish set. So when you get kind of fans who are dedicated like that, I did see it. There are various websites that do the catchphrases from UHF, aren't there?
Oh, yes.
You know, like, you know, Gandhi, too, he's back, he's mean, and he knows how to party. It's just kind of full of one-liners like that. So with dedicated fans like that, I'm sure there would be a market for a limited re-release of the film.
Certainly.
Oh, absolutely.
I absolutely
And
think so.
Perhaps combined with a live-to-screen thing, you know, as well.
Yeah.
That would be lovely.
Yeah, live to screen and a release of the soundtrack, the score.
Let's do it all.
Work perfectly together in the package.
We've got it all on UHF.
The big problem with live to screen, by the way, is that you've got to get a split track. You've got them to take you've got to get them to take the music out of the film.
Okay. You can't just play over it.
Well, because you've got, you know, in a film you have 3 tracks normally. You have the dialogue tracks, the effects tracks, and the music tracks. And when you dub a film, you marry them together and you get a married print. So you need to go back and have dialogue and effects and Weird Al's songs, but without the orchestral score. So that's the problem with it. You know, I guess you could have somebody. No, you couldn't have someone with a volume control, because if you turn down the music, you're probably going to kill dialogue as well. So that's the technical thing. You've got to get you must find the rights holder, and the studio must be willing to do a special live-to-screen print, you know, and that's the expense and the difficulty.
John, leave that up to us. We will figure it out.
Okay.
We're going to get this released. We're going to we're going to do it all.
We're going to hatch a plot here.
That's right. John, what a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for telling us.
All right. Well, that's, you know, you've got my email. Stay in touch and let me know where you get on with the... first of all, I think we should get the soundtrack album out, and then we should get a live to screen.
Let's do it. We'll start a list. We'll get it done. We'll stay in touch.
Yeah.
John, is there anything you want to tell us, promote, website, anything we want to send fans to?
No, not. You know, I'm living. I am in England at the moment. I mean, you thought I was in LA. I mean, I had a house in Studio City, but I let it go a couple of years ago. But you know, I spend. You know, I've just got a lot of work. I'm working on an animation called The Clangers, which is for the BBC, which is taking a lot of time. You know, we're hoping to have a Spamalot movie come up soon. So,
wow.
But we're waiting for Fox to, you know, to get it into their production schedule.
That would be amazing.
And so that's going to be the big thing this year, hopefully.
That would be amazing.
But Obviously, Spamalot completely transformed my life in that, I could stop living hand to mouth. I think if anyone wants to be a film composer, be very careful. I think I lost my house 5 times.
Wow.
3 times to the bank and twice to the landlord. I've told you about one of them,
Right.
But I mean, it's very hard to bring a family up and compose music. So you just got to be very, very dedicated.
And we are so thankful that you were. You got such a great list of films you worked on. Most importantly, UHF, of course. And we're gonna get that album out. We're gonna get the live to screen. We can't wait. John, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, great. All right, best of luck with your podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, it's Bob, the station manager from U62, Wheel of Fish. Anyway, you're listening to Dave and Ethan's 2000-inch Weird Al podcast.
Back in 1989, I never had the opportunity to see UHF in a theater. And I know you never saw UHF in a theater because you weren't born yet.
Well, I like to think that maybe I was conceived around the same time that it was in theaters. So I guess there was a possibility that I could have been technically in this universe when it was out. But no, I did not see it in theaters in its original release. But I have seen it in theaters.
Oh, really?
As you know, I used to work at Proctor's in Schenectady, and I was part of this really cool club called It Came From Schenectady, where me and a couple of the other guys who are big movie fans and cult movie fans would put on screenings of shows. So, I mean, they did everything from The Room to Big Lebowski to Crazier Things, and as soon as I joined up with them, of course, I had to do a screening of UHF, and it was really a blast. We actually ended up doing it twice, and they were both big successes. So the first one was enough of a big success that they're like, "Hey, we should do this again," because typically It Came From Schenectady would do it once and then kind of move on, but it was so popular we decided to do it again. And what was really great is we brought in a local food vendor, and we actually sold Twinkie Wiener sandwiches at the event. And I just remember standing there eating a Twinkie Wiener sandwich, looking at the crowd, all eating Twinkie Wiener sandwiches, about to see UHF on the big screen for the first time. And I was just like, I would have never believed myself if I told, 13-year-old Ethan that this day would come, but it did. And it was amazing. The crowd loved all the different parts in the film. Of course, every part that you would expect the crowd to react to, they did. And it was just so much fun to watch it with a like-minded audience. And the first time we showed it, we did a bonus screening afterwards, and we actually watched Apocalypse HD. And that was really cool on the big screen, seeing all those music videos in HD. And the second time we did it, as a bonus screening, we showed the complete Al. So it was really cool to not only see UHF on the big screen, but I also got to see Apocalypse HD and Complete Al on the big screen. And both times before the screenings, I did little trivia giveaways, like try and stump me, or, try and answer the trivia. And I tried to write really easy questions, but even the easiest questions I could think of, unfortunately, we were a little too hard for the audience. And then it just, instead of it becoming a trivia show, it just became funny for me to read these questions that everyone thought were impossible. So it worked out in the end, but man, they were really fun. I wish you could have been there. Have you seen UHF on a big screen?
I did finally remedy that 24 years later. I did see it. 24 years later, it was October 18, 2013. This was the same trip out in Tulsa that I had made for all the different UHF sites.
Oh, cool.
Right. Yeah. Well, there was this place down, and the whole city was basically celebrating what they were calling the 25th anniversary. It was really the 24th anniversary, but they were calling the 25th anniversary of the year it was recorded.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Right. So they were billing it all as the 25th anniversary, but it really was the 24th anniversary. But anyway, it was October 18, 2013, at this place called Circle Cinema in downtown Tulsa. And what was really cool is that this cinema, every 2 hours, they were playing, like for 24 hours straight, they were playing UHF.
Wow. Did you sit there for 24 hours? I feel like I would be tempted to.
I was tempted. I was tempted to, however, because I did want to see the sights on the UHF
Okay,
filming tour.
okay.
We did not. We made Vicky and I made it at an 8 p.m. showing, and what was really cool is that there were the whole theater was filled with other Weird Al fans.
That's
that I
awesome.
knew.
That's
they come out
awesome.
like. Alicia was there, Sarah, Peggy, Nancy, Mason, and Amara were all just hanging out there, and it was really cool to get this. My first experience to get to see it with some super fans,
Right.
And we all, of course, recited along, and to all the different, fun
All the
little
parts,
in
yeah.
the film, and then
Supplies.
and afterwards. They also had run a contest there where the people had done artwork for UHF, and they had all their artwork up in the lobby. So there were all different artwork, UHF themed artwork in their lobby, and it was
Cool.
it was a really fun experience. It was a good, being that I didn't see it in 1989. It was a good first time to see it, with
Yeah, it
with
sounds
the
it.
right people. Yeah.
In the right people, in the right location. That sounds really cool. And now, I understand that you actually saw it with a couple other people, like on stage.
I did actually. This was cool. Back on October 30th, 2016, there was a screening of UHF put as on part of Benson Ball, which is a big comedy festival in Washington D.C.
Okay.
And it was at the Lincoln Theater, and it was a UHF with live, commentary, and some of the people that were there were Al and Emo Phillips.
Wow.
And it was hosted by Tig Notaro.
Tignataro, of course.
Sure.
Very funny.
And it was also like Dave Hill was there, and there were a couple other comedians that were there.
Yeah, I was so bummed to have missed this because Dave Hill's a friend of mine. I've performed with him a bunch, and he is super, super funny. So I know I've talked to him in my... in our off time, and I've asked him every single thing I could ask him if he remembered about that experience. It just sounds way too cool. How was it?
It was really cool because actually, when you think of like that they're going to do a live Q&A, you usually think, oh, they're going to show the movie and then they're going to have a question and answer session after. Well,
Right.
what they did is they were showing the movie, and at certain parts of the movie, they were bringing people out on stage, and they were pausing the movie, and they were letting the movie play in the background while Tig was interviewing Al and Emo and everybody. So it was really kind of
That's
cool.
really cool.
Because you were watching the movie in the background. Of course, they basically prefaced that. They warn people, make sure you see the movie before you come because we're going to do this. Of course, that wasn't an issue for
Right.
me, and probably 99% of the audience, because definitely when it got to the audience participation parts, the supplies, whatever,
Pick
somebody
the box,
would
pick
the
the
box.
box.
Somebody would yell, and Al would be like, "Oh yeah, my fans want to watch this," and we would just all they would stop the conversation, and basically they would. Everyone would participate, and then they would go back to whatever the conversation. So it was kind of like almost having commentary going on while you were watching like live commentary going on while you're watching the movie. It was an awesome experience, and I really wish that when they do those kind of Q&A sessions that they play the movie and then the person comes out, I wish that they kind of would use this as an example because it was really just so much fun, because most of the time when you're going to these Q&As, you've already seen the movie.
Right.
But just to have the movie there and have, it as a great way for, them to trigger questions to ask the performer who's up on stage in this case, there was like 4 or 5 people up on stage that were all watching the movie along with us and commenting. And then, of course, I think at the end, they may have taken a few questions from the audience as well.
Man, I would love to try out that format and see how that works. It sounds so much fun. So we've both seen it in theaters. You saw it with, kind of interrupting in a panel. And something you kind of hit on a little bit is something that we both actually got to go to together, was a screening followed by a Q&A with Al on stage.
Yeah, that was September 16th, 2017 at the Columbus Theater in Providence, Rhode Island.
That was awesome. I remember making the drive up. I think I like only heard about it like a week before it happened, and I just like I bought like the last ticket available, and I drove all the way out to Rhode Island, and it was such an amazing experience. Because again, it was different than watching it like in a movie theater. You're watching it in this really cool venue that probably sat 800 to 1,000 people. And then, of course, the audience is reacting to all the parts.
Right.
And then Al comes out, and there was a really good moderator, and he talked to Al for a bit, and then they took questions from the audience, and I had a really great time.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, definitely, and that's a very memorable experience for me because actually during the Q&A session, I actually got to go up and talk.
I remember.
At the microphone,
and I filmed you during this part. I don't know if we saw the video somewhere.
Yeah. Well, this was special because this was like a couple days before this event happened. The Star Fund, the Weird Al Star Fund, had hit its $40,000 goal.
Right.
So because of this event coming up, I was like, well, this is a perfect opportunity. If I get to tell Al in person that, this star is funded, it was going to happen, but, he'd already known it was, been accepted, he'd been accepted. But if I could tell him it's fully funded and he doesn't have to worry about that aspect of it, that would be cool. So I did. I went up to the microphone and I told him, and he basically kind of pointed me out before I even started talking. I remember that. And then when I made my announcement, he was of course excited, and of course everybody in the theater was really happy, and it was kind of cool because I did get a lot of people afterwards after the event coming up to me and shaking my hand, and just saying thanks for doing that, and really appreciate everything that you put in to help Al get that star. So that's a very all three experiences that I've seen UHF in a movie theater setting or in a theater setting have been just great, amazing experiences for me.
Totally. And what's so crazy is you announced the the funding was complete, and then less than a year later we were in LA for the star ceremony. So that's true. That's so cool that it was that close to when it actually happened. I love it. So Dave, I think that we should do a screening eventually. I think we should get together and we should do a UHF screening. How fun would that be?
I would love that if we did like a podcast right from the theater where we're screening UHF. I think that would be amazing. Fun. And of course, all our listeners are more than welcome to come and hang out and watch the movie with us.
Well, so what do you guys think? Should we do it? Should we set this up? I think we should. Even if nobody shows up, I would just like to watch it again on the big screen.
If it was just me and Ethan sitting in the theater watching it.
Dave and Ethan's 2,000-inch UHF screening.
We want to thank all of our listeners, and of course we want to thank John, who called in all the way from England. We're going to do whatever we can to get that UHF score released, aren't we, Ethan?
I mean, we wanted to ask him about that, and he just brought it right up. So thanks, John.
And I personally know from experience that if Al fans want something done, we'll get it done.
That's right. We got the star. We got UHF released on DVD. We'll do it all. We'll do it all on UHF. And not to mention the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles soundtrack was released after all these years. So hopefully we can get that done for UHF.
Yeah, I would love. I know I'm not alone when I say I want a copy of that for my collection. To listen to it.
There are dozens of us who want it. Honestly, UHF is so popular, and especially vinyls are so popular. I really think that if they did a limited run of that, it would sell out instantly. So here's hoping that we can make that happen.
Yeah, especially, with vinyl coming back, just something really nice, pretty presentation. I think this would sell well among the Weird Al fans, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, even if not just for the fact that it's the UHF score, but also the fact that we learned that, Bermuda and the band are performing on it. So that's just a really cool aspect of it that would make it even that much more collectible and desirable.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so you can check us out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at 2000inch. That's the number 2000, the word INCH, and 2000inch.com.
And you can always call us, don't forget, at 347-SPATULA, which is 347-772-8852. And you can leave us a message any time of day or night. We love hearing from our listeners out there, and we might even play your message on the air.
If you like this podcast, please subscribe. It means a lot to us. We're on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, anywhere you can listen to or stream podcasts.
And if you find a place where we're not, let us know and we'll add ourselves there. We look forward to hanging out with all of our fans in Guilford and Mashantucket and Queens and Boston and Lewiston and everywhere else we're going to be later this summer. So keep on listening to our concert reviews, the bonus episodes, and, we call them centimeters, of course. And we're producing so much great interviews and stuff. We cannot wait to share it with you coming up this year.
Yeah, if you'll be at any of those shows, remember, stop by, say hello. We'll give you stickers. It's great.
Unless Frank forgets to give them to us, like he did in Philly.
And we'll be recording centimeter episodes, which are reviews after those. So yeah, and we actually got some great fan reactions from Philadelphia. So we're looking forward to talking to fans and maybe getting some more fan reactions.
Totally. And next week, I'm so excited. UHF month continues. Of course, it's the 30th anniversary of our favorite movie and our amazing guests. I don't even know if we should surprise them or just tell them. Let's just tell them David Bowe is going to be on the show.
Oh, David Bowe, he's amazing. Of course, he plays Bobo the Clown, or Bob, in the movie UHF.
Yeah, and, after we spoke to him, we know for sure that he's just a genuinely nice and really funny guy. So I can't wait for you to hear that interview with him.
I so want to just hang out with David Bowe.
Maybe we could go to a Cubs game.
He's so much fun. I don't think I've laughed that hard in a long time since talking to David. He's just a funny, genuine guy. I can't wait for you guys to hear this.
And I learned so much too. Not only was he funny, he was very informative about UHF. So catch the brand new episode next week.
That was Dave and Ethan's 2000 Inch Weird Al Podcast, episode 11 Inch.
Where does Elvis come into it? Do you kind of gyrate your hips a lot?